Well, in general, UNHCR is supportive of bilateral agreements or multilateral agreements between countries that enlarge the protection space for refugee and asylum seekers. And if it helps finding solutions for states and for asylum seekers, we have no problem with that sort of agreement. But in this particular agreement, we were not aware that an accompanied minor would be included in the agreement. And what we would like to see in the agreement is some specific safeguards for unaccompanied minors.
So do you feel that the Australian government, in a sense, has shirked its duty of care for the asylum seekers if this deal goes ahead?
Well, I'm not saying that. I think at this stage, channel of communications are open, and UNHCR stands ready to assist the parties in improving the current agreement. I think there is room for maneuver there. It's not because the agreement has already been signed that there is no way that we can work out some practical modalities of operations that would provide for the sort of safeguards we have been asking for.
So what specific safeguards do you want written into that deal?
Well, you see, in the context of maritime arrival to Australia, it's a bit the same like here in the Caribbean Sea. Your country is confronted to very complex challenges in terms of mixed migration. Some of those kids have been trafficked by their own parents, sometimes by criminal networks, and unless you have interviewed, in depth those unaccompanied minors, and you have determined that it is in their best interest to return them to their country of origin or the country they just departed from, you run the risk to put those people in a very difficult situations where you send them back. I think it's important to take the time to ascertain what is in the best interest of those children. And to reach that decision, you need to find out, you need to try to trace the parents or other relatives in the country of origin, find out whether the movement of those children is not a result of the exploitation of the parents or other networks behind. So return may be a solution for some of them, but may not be the solution for some others.
But that sounds like a very complex thing to write into a deal when nothing has been struck yet.
I know, but there are good practices around the world on how to deal with unaccompanied children, and those practices are known to the Australian government, and we can certainly help them to design that into the agreement.
Does it matter that Malaysia isn't party to the International Refugee Convention?
Well, the fact they are not party to the 1951 convention, yes, of course, is an additional cause of concern for us, in the sense that you don't have the legal safeguards available in the domestic law of the country that would somehow cater for those protection concerns that UNHCR have with this agreement.
Will the UNHCR now insist that the Australian government make these assurances on the safety of the unaccompanied minors?
Yes, no, we would like to encourage the Australian authorities as well as other parties to add those safeguards for unaccompanied children. This year we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the 1951 Refugee Convention. That should be an opportunity for countries to enlarge protection states, reiterate firm commitment to refugee principles. And we would not like to see this year, agreements being signed between countries that would weaken the refugee protection regime in the world.
Finally, you mentioned that other countries have got protocols in place. Is there a particular example that you think is a very good one?
We have been working on those issues with partners, with NGOs in the world that have developed, a specialization on working on child protection issues. We have partnership agreement in several countries in the world that involve also colleagues from UNICEF or colleagues from IOM. So there's a lot of experience out there among international humanitarian organizations to assist governments in finding adequate solutions for unaccompanied children. And there's no specific example coming to my mind, but there's been good practices in a number of countries.
And until now, have you been satisfied with the level of communication between your agency and the Australian government?
Well, I'm not the UNHCR representative in Australia, so I don't know to what extent there's been an in-depth discussion on all aspects of this agreement. I think we were given some opportunities, I understand, to comment on a draft version of this agreement. We had welcomed some of the decisions or recommendations reached during the last meeting of the Bali process. What we would like to continue to reiterate that I think it's in the interest of all the parties and of the individuals in questions also that we add those safeguards to the implementation of this agreement. This can be done anytime.
Vincent Cochetel, thank you very much for joining us here on ABC News 24.
You're welcome.